Here's a mistake that's quietly wrecking container gardens all across the country. The moment July hits, most gardeners start treating their pots like they're under siege. Shade cloths go up. Watering cans come out twice a day. And still, plant after plant wilts, browns, and dies. But here's the twist, nobody tells you. That brutal, blistering heat you're so desperately fighting, it isn't the enemy. For a very specific group of plants, it's rocket fuel. Today, we're counting down 15 container crops that don't just survive July. They explode with growth because of it. We're talking desert-born vines, underground powerhouses, and heat-proof legends most gardeners walk right past at the nursery. And stick around, because at the very end, we're revealing a simple trick, something almost 90% of container gardeners get completely wrong that could be quietly cooking your roots alive right now, without you even knowing it. So if you've ever felt like July was your garden's worst enemy, it's time to flip that thinking upside down. Let's get into it. Let's start with a question. What do plants from the driest, harshest deserts on Earth have in common with your backyard patio in July? More than you'd think. Because the 5 crops in this chapter didn't just adapt to brutal heat. They were biologically built for it. Thousands of years before anyone ever grew them in a plastic pot. Let's dive in. Kicking things off at number 15 is a plant that looks like a joke and tastes like a miracle. The cucamelon, also called the Mexican sour gherkin. This tiny, grape-sized fruit looks exactly like a miniature watermelon. But bite into one and you get a burst of crisp cucumber and fresh lime. If you've ever grown a regular cucumber vine in the middle of summer, you already know the heartbreak. One scorching afternoon, and the whole plant just collapses. That's because standard cucumbers have big, thirsty leaves that lose water faster than the roots can replace it. The cucamelon solves this with tiny, almost miniature foliage, which means far less surface area and far less water lost to the sun. But here's the clever part. As summer rolls on, the cucamelon quietly grows a thick, radish-like tuber underground, a hidden reservoir of water and energy the plant can draw from during the worst heat waves. Without ever dropping a single flower, give it a deep 5 to 10 gallon pot, a lightweight trellis, and soil cut with perlite for drainage. And according to the University of California Cooperative Extension, this plant treats hot, arid stress as its ideal growing condition. And here's a fun fact worth knowing. The cucamelon isn't some new garden trend. The Aztecs were eating these long before Europeans ever set foot in the Americas. Number 14 takes botanical trickery to a whole new level. The Armenian cucumber. If you've ever bitten into a homegrown cucumber in July and recoiled at how bitter it tasted, this is the plant that fixes that problem entirely. Here's why that bitterness happens. When a real cucumber gets heat-stressed, it panics and floods its fruit with bitter compounds as a defense response. The Armenian cucumber never does this, because genetically, it isn't a cucumber at all. It's actually a melon. That desert melon heritage gives it a thick, waxy, reflective coating on its leaves, a built-in heat shield that bounces UV rays away and locks moisture in commissary. Set it up with a sturdy 10-gallon pot and a heavy-duty trellis. Since the pale green fruit can stretch past 3 feet long, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension confirms these stay crisp and sweet, even when temperatures blow past 95 degrees. And because it's genetically a melon, you can plant it right next to your regular cucumbers with zero risk of cross-pollination. At number 13 is a plant most people only know as a bath sponge. The loofah gourd. Harvest it young and green. And it's a delicious, zucchini-like vegetable eaten across Asia for generations. The secret to its explosive July growth is inside its stems. Loofah vines have unusually wide vascular vessels, so water gets pumped from root to leaf almost instantly. Like the plant has its own internal air conditioning system. That's what lets it climb 20 to 30 feet if you let it, turning a baking hot patio into a shaded, green escape. You'll need a heavy 15-gallon pot and the tallest trellis you can build. Plus, regular compost. Because this root system is hungry, North Carolina State University notes that loofah actually requires the long, blistering days of midsummer just to trigger flowering. And here's something wild. During World War II, the U.S. Navy used dried loofah fibers as water and oil filters on steam-powered warships. Number 12 brings us a crop most container gardeners overlook completely. Garbanzo beans, better known as chickpeas. Run your fingers across the leaves of a chickpea plant and they'll feel oddly sticky. That's not dirt. It's a natural acid coating the plant produces, one that keeps pests away and traps a thin layer of humidity right against the leaf, slowing down water loss in the heat. A 5 to 7 gallon grow bag is all it needs. No trellis, no fuss, which makes it perfect for a windy balcony. The Food and Agriculture Organization lists chickpeas among the most drought-resistant legumes on the planet, and they actually need that long, dry, July heat to properly fill out their pods. Fun fact, the liquid left over from cooking chickpeas is called aquafaba, and it whips up just like egg whites, which is why vegan bakers treat it like liquid gold. Rounding out this chapter at number 11 is a plant that spends all summer quietly working underground. Itzama, sometimes called the Mexican yam bean. Plant this in cool spring weather and you'll get nothing but disappointment. It needs the longest, hottest days of July to actually thrive. Here's why. During the peak of summer heat, jicama redirects almost all its energy downward, expanding a large, crisp, apple-like tuber underground, while the vines up top barely notice the heat because the plant already knows it has a deep reserve of water waiting below. Give it a 15-inch fabric grow bag and a tall trellis. And make sure to pinch off any flowers you see, so all that energy stays focused on the tuber. The USDA confirms jicama is loaded with inulin, a prebiotic fiber that supports gut health and blood sugar balance. But here's an important warning. While the tuber is sweet and safe to eat, every other part of this plant, the vines, the leaves, even the seed pods, is toxic. So that's 5 plants that treat the desert like home. But if you thought that was impressive, wait until you see what's happening underground in the next 5 crops. Because some of these vegetables are running entire chemical factories beneath the soil just to survive July. If chapter 1 was about plants that shrink away from the sun to survive it, this next group does the opposite. They lean into the heat completely and use it to run entire biological factories underground. Let's get into it. Number 10 brings us a plant most beginners fail with, but for the wrong reason. Turmeric. People usually plant these expensive rhizomes outdoors in cool, damp spring soil and watch them rot before they ever get a chance. That's completely backwards. Turmeric comes from the monsoon regions of Southeast Asia. And while you should start it sprouting indoors in late spring, it absolutely needs the baking heat of July to take off. Look closely at its leaves, and you'll notice they're broad, deeply veined, almost architectural. They act like giant solar panels, pulling in maximum sunlight to fuel growth happening entirely out of sight, underground. At the same time, the plant transpires enough moisture through those big leaves to create its own little humid microclimate, cooling itself down even in the harshest afternoon sun. For containers, go wide and shallow, at least 15 to 20 inches across. Since the rhizomes spread sideways, not down, keep the soil rich and consistently damp. And here's something worth knowing. The University of Hawaii has found that turmeric produces its highest concentration of curcumin the compound behind its anti-inflammatory reputation, specifically when it's grown under long, hot, bright summer days. Fun fact, that same vivid yellow pigment has been used for centuries to dye the saffron robes worn by Buddhist monks. At number 9 is a southern classic that turns hot, muggy nights into a feature, not a flaw. Bush lima beans. If you've ever grown regular green beans in July and watched them flower beautifully, only to drop every single blossom without setting a single pod, you already know the frustration. That happens because high nighttime heat literally sterilizes regular bean pollen. Lima beans never got that memo. Native to Central America, they actually need hot, humid summer nights to pollinate properly. And even the compact bush varieties send down a surprisingly deep taproot, reaching moisture that shallow-rooted plants simply can't touch. A 5-gallon grow bag gives that taproot plenty of room. Penn State Extension calls bush lima beans one of the most reliable midsummer legumes there is, largely because their thick, waxy leaves resist wilting when everything else is struggling. And here's a genuinely wild fact. When caterpillars start chewing on lima bean leaves, the plant can detect the exact chemical signature in the insect's saliva and release an airborne distress signal that calls in parasitic wasps to hunt the caterpillars down. Number 8 is proof that some of the best July crops are running their own fertilizer plant underground. Edamame. Planting soybeans in the dead heat of summer sounds risky, but it's actually one of the smartest moves you can make. Edamame roots host colonies of rhizobium bacteria, tiny organisms that pull nitrogen straight out of the air and convert it into usable plant food. That means even if daily summer watering washes nutrients out of your potting mix, the plant is still feeding itself from the inside out. A wide 10-gallon container can comfortably hold several plants, creating a lush, bushy little jungle on your patio. The University of Illinois Extension notes that edamame planted in peak summer heat actually matures faster, rushing through its growth stages to reward you with tender, buttery pods in record time. And here's something most people don't realize. Edamame is one of the rare plant-based foods considered a complete protein, containing all 9 essential amino acids your body needs. Number 7 is a familiar face with a clever midsummer twist. Bush beans. While climbing pole, beans often struggle and drop blossoms in peak July heat. Compact bush beans can be planted right in the thick of summer and still deliver a huge autumn harvest. Since the soil is already baking hot, the seeds germinate fast, often pushing up their first leaves in just 3 or 4 days. The real trick is coating your seeds in a bacterial inoculant powder before planting, which supercharges root development and lets the plant push out a strong flush of pods before the worst heat can stress it. A 5-gallon pot easily supports 3 to 4 plants. According to Cornell University's crop studies, planting into pre-warm July soil dramatically speeds up the entire growth cycle, giving you a full, concentrated harvest in under 50 days. Fun fact: beans are one of the 3 pillars of the legendary Three Sisters planting method used by Native American tribes, working as a natural nitrogen pump that enriches the soil for the other crops around it. And closing out this chapter at number 6 is a Mexican staple that builds its own climate-controlled shelter: the tomatillo. Try growing this in cool spring weather and it'll sit there, stunted and sulking, for months. It needs serious July heat to kick into its sprawling buys. Vining growth stage. The secret is its papery outer husk, called the calyx. While a regular tomato can crack and scald under direct July sun, the tomatillo's husk acts like a built-in shade sail, wrapping the fruit and trapping just enough humidity to protect its delicate skin. You'll want a large, heavy 10-gallon pot for the sprawling branches. And here's the one rule you cannot skip: plant at least 2 tomatillo plants together. They're self-incompatible, meaning one plant alone will flower beautifully and produce absolutely nothing. The University of Illinois Extension confirms that with a pollinating partner nearby, Tomatillos in hot summer containers become incredibly prolific. Fun fact: archaeologists have found fossilized tomatillos in Mexico, proof that the Aztecs and Mayans were growing these long before the tomato was ever domesticated. 5 plants down, and each one is quietly running its own underground operation just to beat the heat. But the next 5, they're not just surviving July. They're the plants that actually crown this list. And the very last one is about to change how you think about summer gardening completely. We've made it to the top 5. And this is where things get serious. Because these aren't just plants that tolerate July. They're the ones that actually need it, that were practically designed for it. Let's finish this countdown. Number 5 brings us the ultimate answer to a problem every summer gardener knows too well. New Zealand spinach. The moment the dog days of July hit, regular leafy greens like romaine or traditional spinach bolt turn bitter and die almost overnight. New Zealand spinach does the exact opposite. Look closely at its thick, triangular leaves in bright sunlight, and you'll notice something strange. They almost sparkle, like they're covered in tiny ice crystals. Those are actually microscopic water bladders, and the plant uses them to store excess moisture right on the leaf's surface. When the blazing midday sun hits, those bladders reflect the light away like millions of tiny mirrors, keeping the leaf cool and hydrated from the inside out. An 8-inch pot or a hanging basket works perfectly. Since this plant loves to trail and spill over the edges, Cornell University confirms it thrives in extreme heat and is essentially immune to the bolting that wrecks regular spinach. And here's a fact worth remembering. Captain James Cook actually fed this exact plant to his sailors on the HMS Endeavour, using it to fight off scurvy centuries before we understood why it worked. At number 4 is a crop that solves the July heat problem simply by growing up and away from it. Pole beans. Specifically, the heat-tolerant heirloom types, or Asian yard-long beans. Here's something most people don't think about. Your patio surface might be baking at 110 degrees, but just a few feet up in the air, temperatures actually drop noticeably. Pole beans take full advantage of that. With a tall, sturdy trellis, they climb straight up into cooler, breezier air, keeping their leaves well ventilated and dramatically reducing the fungal diseases that thrive in hot, stagnant air down at ground level. You'll need a solid 10-gallon pot to anchor the trellis against summer wind. The University of California notes that climbing beans use that intense, unbroken July sunlight to fuel rapid vertical growth, essentially building a living green wall that can shade the rest of your patio plants too. And here's a strange little fact. No matter where in the world you plant them, pole beans always twine counterclockwise around a trellis. Every single time. Claiming the bronze at number 3 is a plant that treats scorching soil like an ignition switch. Summer squash, including zucchini and yellow crookneck. Most gardeners plant this in early spring, only to watch it rot and stall in cold, wet soil while pests pick it apart. Planting a compact bush variety in the middle of July skips that entire struggle. Since the soil is already at peak summer temperature, the roots expand instantly, and the plant rockets straight into rapid growth. A 10 to 15-gallon container gives it the room and water capacity it needs. Purdue University Extension reports something genuinely clever here. Midsummer squash actually grows fast enough to outpace the life cycle of the squash vine borer, one of its most destructive pests. By the time you plant, that first generation of pests has already died off, leaving you with a clean, high-yield harvest. And if your plant produces dozens of big yellow blossoms but no fruit, don't panic. Those flowers are actually a delicacy, often stuffed with ricotta and lightly fried. Our runner-up at number 2 solves the single most frustrating problem of summer gardening. Bush cucumbers. Regular vining cucumbers are notorious for collapsing in the July afternoon heat, because water has to travel several feet up a thick, stressed vine just to reach the leaves. Bush cucumbers skip that problem entirely. Their compact, efficient structure means water reaches the whole canopy almost instantly, drastically reducing heat wilt. Planted in a deep 5 to 10 gallon container, their roots also dive straight down into the cool, moist center of the soil, away from the baking surface heat. The trick is to harvest often. The more you pick, the more the plant produces. The University of Georgia Extension confirms that compact bush varieties simply survive and fruit better in peak heat than their sprawling vining cousins. And here's a fact that explains an old phrase: cucumbers are about 95% water, which is the literal scientific reason behind the phrase, cool as a cucumber. And now, taking the crown at number 1, the true holy grail of the summer patio, bush tomatoes. If you've ever grown a beautiful tomato plant covered in bright yellow flowers, only to get absolutely no fruit, you already know this heartbreak. It usually happens because nighttime temperatures stay above 75 degrees, which quietly kills off regular tomato pollen. The fix is simple but often overlooked. Skip the massive vining tomatoes entirely in July and plant heat-tolerant bush varieties instead, like Solar Fire or Florida 91. These were specifically bred with heat-stable pollen, so no matter how hot and sticky the nights get, every yellow flower still has a real shot at becoming a full, juicy tomato. A 10 to 15 gallon container is plenty, and because these are determinate varieties, you won't need tall cages either. The University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences officially recognizes heat-tolerant bush tomatoes as the most reliable way to guarantee a full harvest straight through the worst of summer. And here's a fact that still surprises people. Even though a tomato is scientifically a fruit, the U.S. Supreme Court legally declared it a vegetable back in 1893, purely to settle an import tax dispute. 15 plants down. But there's one more thing standing between your container garden and a truly explosive July. Something almost nobody talks about. And it has nothing to do with what you plant. Here's something almost nobody warns you about. And it's the single fastest way your plants die in July, even when you've picked the perfect crop. It has nothing to do with watering, or sunlight, or soil. It's about what's happening inside the walls of your container. When the July sun hits a thin, dark-colored plastic nursery pot directly, the temperature inside that soil can spike past 120 degrees. Think about that for a second. That's hot enough to essentially cook the roots alive from the outside in, and it can happen even when the plant on top still looks perfectly green and healthy. By the time you notice wilting, the damage below the surface is often already done. The fix for this is almost embarrassingly simple, and it's called double potting. Take your plant, still in its thin plastic nursery pot exactly as it is, and set that whole pot inside a second, larger container. It doesn't need to be fancy. A thick terracotta planter, a glazed ceramic pot, even an oversized plastic bucket works perfectly. The only thing that matters is the gap of air left between the two pots. Here's why that works. Air is a remarkably poor conductor of heat. That thin buffer of empty space between your inner and outer pot acts almost like a thermos, physically blocking most of that solar radiation from ever reaching the soil where your roots are living. In practice, this simple trick can drop your internal soil temperature by up to 15 degrees, which is often the exact difference between a plant that limps through July and one that thrives in it. It costs nothing. It takes about 30 seconds per pot. And yet, it's one of the most overlooked details in container gardening. Because everyone's so focused on watering schedules and fertilizer, they forget the container itself might be working against them. So here's the real takeaway from everything you've just seen. Growing a thriving container garden in July was never about fighting the heat, hiding from it, or surviving it. It's about choosing plants that were built to use that heat and giving them just enough protection to do what they already know how to do. So here's the truth. Most gardeners never hear, July was never your enemy. It was only ever unkind to the wrong plants. The moment you stop fighting the heat and start choosing crops that were literally born for it, everything changes. Your patio stops being a place where things struggle to survive and starts becoming the most productive corner of your entire growing season. 15 plants. 15 different ways nature already solved this problem, long before we ever needed university research to explain it. All that's left now is picking just one, dropping it into a pot this weekend, and watching it do exactly what it was designed to do. So tell me, out of everything on this list, which one surprised you the most? Was it the cucamelon hiding a water tank underground? Or bush tomatoes finally solving the flower drop? Nobody could explain. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you loved this deep dive, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with someone who thinks their garden is doomed. The moment summer gets serious, because it isn't, it just needed the right plants. See you in the next one.